Welcome to Stop Hiding, Start Healing, the podcast where we dive deep into the transformative journey of self-discovery and healing from addiction and other life struggles with your host, Craig Brown, author, speaker, and recovery pastor. Craig and his guests will guide you through conversations that empower, inspire, and illuminate the path towards a more authentic and fulfilling life. Together, we'll explore stories of triumph over adversity, expert insights on personal growth, and practical strategies to help you break free from the pain of the past through Christ-centered recovery. It's time to let go of fear, embrace vulnerability, and embark on a remarkable voyage of healing. Join us as we uncover the wisdom that emerges when we choose to stop hiding and start healing. Now, here is your host, Craig Brown.
Welcome to Stop Hiding, Start Healing. So grateful that you could join us and be with us where we discuss everything addiction, recovery, Christ-centered recovery, my guests and I, testimonies, education, all the details involved with just dealing with life struggles. And our purpose is always to help you, if you're struggling, discover how you can live a life of meaning and purpose by stop hiding and start healing. Whatever that pain, whatever that shame, whatever you are dealing with in your life, this is a place where we hope that will be used to help you get one step further to a place of healing in your life. And no matter what life issue you may be struggling with. I have a very special guest today. Darryl Rodgers is an interventionist. He's a family recovery coach, speaker, and author. At the age of 19, he began a career as a corporate pilot. He later served in the Army National Guard as a co-pilot gunner on an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter. Through interventions and one-of-a-kind online coaching program, Darryl helps the families of loved ones battling drug or alcohol addiction recover and heal together. Darryl began his work in the field of drug prevention and addiction recovery when his oldest of two boys, Chase, died in a marijuana-impaired wreck in 2014 after battling addiction for a year and a half. Darryl, God bless you, man. Welcome to Stop Hiding, Start Healing. So glad you're joining me today.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you.
Let me say at the outset, Darryl, after being in recovery ministry and Christ-centered recovery ministry for 28 years, in my own experience, there's no greater pain than that of a parent that has lost a child, whether addiction, automobile, no matter what that is. There's just no greater pain that I have witnessed in the lives of others, and especially parents, during my tenure in recovery ministry. So you are to be commended for launching your, I would call it a ministry, and the work that you're doing to help parents all over the world, all over the country. But you're to be commended from this tragedy that you were launched into this mission and purpose to help others. So I just want to commend you right at the outset and tell you how honored I am to have you on to talk about this.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate that. It's not something I would have chosen, obviously, but God has used it, and He's used Chase's story. It's been very healing for me to be able to share his story and to be able to do the work that I've been able to do.
Amen. Darryl, what I wanted to do at the outset, let's go back. Give us all a glimpse of the Rodgers family, your wife, Kim, Chase, Justin, just, give us a glimpse of family life before you received that call or when Chase passed on. Share a little bit about the family and family life with the Rodgers.
Okay. Yeah, so Chase was a really active kid growing up, was diagnosed ADHD early on. We kind of fought that whole diagnosis for a while, but he was struggling in school. Just from a standpoint of being able to focus, he had difficulties focusing. He was a very bright kid.
Yeah.
I think a lot of ADD, ADHD kids are, they think so quickly that they get bored in a classroom environment. They need more stimulation. They need to be outdoors and moving around more and active. But anyway, he stayed out of trouble. He was quiet, easygoing, played sports, was involved in a lot of different sports from an early age, and he was small for an athlete, but really quick, very gifted with good hand-eye coordination, and could pick up on things athletically very quickly, and just excelled at sports. So, and then, our youngest one, Justin, Justin and Chase were 7 years apart.
Oh,
yeah. And they both played. Justin, when he came along, we had narrowed Chase down to one sport. And I said, pick whichever one you want. But, by the time Justin was ready for sports, we were traveling all over, and I said, we need more family time. We need to, narrow this down a little bit. And so Justin and Chase both were narrowed down to football at that point. Chase chose football. That's what he wanted. And I thought, Chase, man, you're kind of small for a football player, but okay. And he really did well. He played in high school, he played cornerback. And which is, defensive back, cover the wide receivers and all, and just really quick and agile, and really excelled this senior year. So, and Justin ended up wearing his brother's jersey number all the way through high school. They were both number 34. Also played cornerback in high school and had a really good high school career. So, so we spent a lot of time when we weren't in church, and doing other things in the community and with them in school and everything. It was a lot of sporting activity, sports.
yeah.
Now, I grew up in the country in South Carolina, and my dad was a Southern Baptist preacher. I shared with you earlier, and so grew up in, small town and then small country church. I grew up really in a hunting and fishing tradition, and Chase loved the outdoors, and he would hunt and fish with me, and also we camped together a lot. Both of them, both Justin and Chase, were Eagle Scouts.
Okay.
So we spent a lot of time out there in the woods together.
So there's a lot of activity in the house with the boys.
Oh, yeah.
One sport here, Boy Scouts, church activities.
Yeah.
So, that's wonderful. And you and Kim, you've been married 31 years now, or is that right?
30. Let's see. We're going, let's see, the 21st, which is just a few days away. Thanks for reminding me of my anniversary. That will be 34 years. We got married in 1990.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. That is wonderful. That is great. So now, Chase, you said he really excelled at football. Now, he got a football scholarship. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was. It was a partial scholarship, or at a partial ride at an NAIA school. So not in the NCAA conference, but it was like on a Division II level.
Okay.
So they were the only school to offer him any scholarship money. He had middle of his junior year, we transferred him to a military school in Virginia.
Okay.
His grades had begun to slip. He was failing one subject. He'd never really struggled this much with grades before.
Yeah.
And just a lot of other things going on. He was beginning to develop an attitude, and I didn't think that there was any drug use going on, but something just wasn't right. And I decided to move him to that school. I have a military background.
Yeah.
Well, you read the bio there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, a military school with this ADHD diagnosis, I thought the military school would be good for him in terms of providing some structure and some discipline, and it was.
Yeah.
And he was able to graduate and pull his grades up and graduate. But while he was there, his senior year, he really excelled on the football team. And there's just some amazing things that he did as senior year at football. But caught the attention of some of those smaller schools. He wasn't big enough, to be a D1 prospect. He was like maybe 5'10", 150 pounds,
But he could hit.
He could hit, and he was fearless. He was fearless on the football field. Yeah, and he was just so agile and so quick.
Yeah,
he could get around blocks. People couldn't block him.
Yeah,
and and could catch.
So sport, football especially, but sports overall is probably a really good outlet for him. Correct?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned. You may have observed like the attitude change and the grades and those types of things. Did he begin to experiment with drugs at all before he went off to college?
I know he did. I suspect he was experimenting a little bit when I began to see some of those changes.
Yeah.
But I have no way to verify that because he told his mother, told Kim that he did not begin using or experimenting until he was in military school.
Okay.
And that he began to experiment some there,
Okay.
There were things that they had some pretty tight controls on a lot of things, but things would always slip through the cracks,
Isn't that the case though? I mean, yeah, it's always the case. That's the horrific thing, Darryl, about drugs. They're readily available, and the cunning and the slick ones will always figure a way. I mean, it even gets into prisons and things. I mean, So you started to notice these changes in him. So he graduated from the military academy and went off to college. Mm-hmm. And then, as you've explained, academically, things were not going that great. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. He came home at Christmas. He was on academic probation, and I told him, "Hey, Chase, you don't have to go back to school if you don't want to." Yeah. They had redshirted him his freshman year.
Okay.
So he wasn't playing any football. He was just practicing, but not getting on the field. And then once football season ended, he came home that Christmas, and I brought that up, and I gave him some options. Like, look, if you want to go to like a community college nearby, I'll help you out with that. You can learn a trade or something, or, there's always the military. And no, he wanted to go back to school. Well, I had a pretty good idea why he wanted to go back, and it wasn't to study.
Yeah. Because the attraction took over, the desire took over, the friendships, the party. I mean, those were all attractive to a young guy, So would you say he lacked self-discipline? I mean, as an athlete, it's interesting. So many athletes have this amazing discipline, but at the same time, they tend to lack in some other areas. Did he lack self-discipline, self-control?
Somewhat, I think, but definitely not when it came to athletics.
Yeah,
he loved his athletics so much. He practiced hard. He played hard. He worked out hard in the gym. To be as small as he was, it was amazing how much weight he could lift. So not in that area, but I think in other areas. He just was not interested in academics.
Yeah, understand. Yeah, it's amazing, and certainly over the last 10 years of all the work you've been doing in research, and everything starts to fall. All the responsibilities and everything kind of go off to the way. They're so myopic and wanting to go to the party, and it just takes over.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Darryl, tell me, how is Kim doing during him going to military school, and how about Justin? He's home alone now, and what was that dynamic?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah, while Chase was off.
Kim was really struggling with the stress around all of that.
Yeah.
And she began to have these involuntary leg jerks. And we initially, the first thought that everybody gets when they hear you describe it is, restless leg syndrome, and that was my first thought too. And she was tested for that. She ended up going to all kinds of specialists, having all kinds of tests run, brain scans, everything you can think of. And nothing was clicking. And finally, she went to see a doctor over at Duke University, and he looked at all of the tests she had run, and he looked at everything, all the charts, and he said, it's just stress. It's just stress. And I was with her. I was with her when he said that, and I was just like, wow, I didn't realize, and this was still relatively early on,
right.
But it was a stress from, just his behavior at home and the friction between he and I, because we had always been really close, but now there was a lot of friction between us. I didn't understand what was going on, and I was trying to figure it out, and I'm kind of that military, disciplinarian kind of dad, and we were just really butting heads.
Yeah, I ask because when we have a son or daughter that's really struggling, generally it puts a ton of stress on marriage, puts a ton of stress on the whole, the entire family dynamic. And that's why I was asking about Justin as well, because he's an only child now at home, and he's witnessing mom and dad kind of going through this and what have you. And it can be very, very challenging for the whole family.
Yeah, mine and Justin's relationship has really blossomed through all of this. It was very difficult at first.
I bet.
In the middle of all this, Justin was in the 8th grade when Chase died.
Yeah.
And so now he's going through that stage. He was already beginning to go through that stage where you test dad a little bit, anyway. And so now you throw in all this stuff going on with Chase, and it was really confusing for him. And so now he and I are at it. First it was me and Chase, now it's me and Justin.
Yeah.
And he was really testing me. And he was a little bit different, in terms of personality. Chase was very easygoing. For most of his life, I could say Chase, I could sort of lean on him in the direction I thought he needed to go, and he would go that way, even if it was just to make me happy, until the drugs entered the picture. Justin, he's very stubborn. He would push back, but he would also, Justin's always been very inquisitive, like why? He wants to know why about everything. He wants to know why. And that's great. I love it. He used to really just ask me a ton of questions about things. Through this whole situation, I finally realized that I needed to back off as Justin was getting a little bit older, allow him to make more of his own decisions, make mistakes, fail. And as I began to do that, when he was in his freshman year of college, I remember him calling me, and he said, "Hey, Dad, he said, I got a question about a girl for you. And he said, I got, and that was when everything flipped.
Yeah.
It went to the point where now he's respecting me again. And instead of me trying to force him to go in the direction I want him to go, he's asking me for guidance, and which is the way you want it to be. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was, and ever since then, our relationship, we've just gotten closer and closer in so many ways. And we share a common interest. I'm a former aviator. Justin now has an interest in aviation. So not as a profession, but he quizzes me about that sort of thing all the time as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I have 3 sons as well, 3 adult sons, 29, 27, almost 28, actually, 24. So, yeah, boys are awesome. They're just awesome.
Yeah, I loved having 2 boys. I love raising boys. Yeah.
So, Darryl, let's talk about Chase. And so he goes off to college. Then he ultimately comes home. Is that correct? Now, prior to the car accident, he was battling for a year and a half. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So, tell us about that period.
Yeah, he came home from college and immediately gravitated to a rough crowd. He dropped out early on in the second semester of his freshman year and came home, gravitated to a rough crowd. Then he would be gone for days at a time. We wouldn't know where he was, and he would just show up. And that was one thing Kim told him, like, this is one rule we have. You're not working. You're not going to school. You're living here at home. We expect you to, at least, if you're going to be gone overnight, give us some idea where you are, when to expect you back. But he wouldn't do that. And it was just getting more and more out of control. And he came home one day, and I'll never forget, that he came to the front door. He'd been gone for days, and I wouldn't let him in.
Really?
And that was tough. But I kept up with him on social media. I'd see his post. He was rail thin, not a big kid to begin with, but now just skinny as a rail, pale, glassy eyed, group pictures of him in a hotel room with a bunch of other kids. They look like they're all just strung out on drugs. It was really, really scary.
What was he using?
Well, to the best that I can determine, it was mostly just marijuana and alcohol for him. Now some of his friends that he was palling around with at that time, there were some other drugs they were experimenting with, and he did experiment a little bit with some Molly. I know that.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I don't think he ever experimented with the opioids, no heroin use or anything like that that I'm aware of.
Right. So go back to, so he shows up at the house. He's been gone for days.
Yeah.
What was it that prompted you drew a line, obviously, and you set one of the hardest boundaries that a parent can set. What prompted you to do that?
I had no knowledge at that time about addiction or anything like that, or setting boundaries. I just knew that there was something, I'll just say it was God, okay, that was speaking to me, like, if you let him in that door, you're continuing to enable his self-destructive behavior.
No kidding.
And so I just didn't let him in. And, as I was following him online, I became very alarmed. And the word intervention popped into my head one day. And I had just surfing through channels. I don't even watch TV now. I mean, I watch The Chosen. Right now we're watching The Chosen, but that's about the extent of my TV, and I watch maybe, just an episode every other night or so,
right.
But I was surfing through channels a little bit then, and came across the show Intervention, and I had seen it a couple of times. I'd never really watched a full episode, but I had seen just enough of it to get the idea. I knew what it was about. And so now I'm starting to think about intervention. So I began to do internet searches, and I found this company that did interventions, and called them and agreed to pay for them to send a guy to our house to do an intervention for Chase.
Oh, and so a lot of our listeners probably have never been through one or have heard about it, just as you had when you're surfing channels. I've been involved in them. It takes quite a bit of planning, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, hey, can you come over and let's confront my son? It's weeks of preparing and making sure all the family members, everybody is totally on board, and there's no going back, sticking by the rules, sticking by the process. And you are now an interventionist, correct? That's what.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so
that's a relatively new role for me.
Yeah.
You know, I got trained in September.
Okay.
But I like doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I would want to be an interventionist, because I thought my initial thoughts were, I don't understand how people who are battling addiction think well enough, and they can manipulate me, and
absolutely.
but I've come to realize that the biggest part of the work is with the family, and it's around setting boundaries.
Yeah.
And I know that side of it.
Yeah. Oh, I know you do. Absolutely. And how did it go with the intervention for Chase?
That was it happened a lot quicker than you might think in that particular case. He called me. We were talking as he was, on the getting on the airplane headed this way, and he's like, I said, "Look, I don't even know where he is right now." And he said, "Well, where does he like to hang out?" And I said, "Well, there's a food court in the local mall." I said, "Sometimes he hangs out there with his friends." He said, "Well, go in there. If you see him," he said, "have this conversation with him and tell him that his mom misses him. Like, hey, come home, see mom, get a shower, get something to eat, and then you can go do whatever you want to do." And he said, "Just have that conversation with him." And I did what he said, and I walked in that door of that food court and looked immediately to my right, and there he was at a table with his friends. It was like magic.
Wow.
Not that I believe in magic, but it was divine. It was divine. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was unbelievable. And I walked right up to him, and I said exactly what the interventionist had told me to say to him. And he said, "Okay." And I thought, yeah, right. Wow. Yeah, we'll see when that happens. So I come back home, and before we could get the intervention team together and really have our meeting, he had already come home and came home, took a shower, and was out the door again. Oh, but we did have our meeting, and we, when he did show up the next time, which wasn't long, another day or two, and he showed up, and it was unexpected, and I'm texting all my friends as I'm talking to him, and was able to get everybody to come over here while he was taking a shower. And when he came out, I told him, "There's some people here to see you." He's like, "Who is it?" I said, "Well, just come out and see. Get dressed, come out and see." And when he came to the living room, we're all sitting there waiting on him.
Wow.
And the whole time, he's saying, "No, I don't need to go to treatment. I'm okay. I don't have a problem." And the interventionist kept handling all of his objections, did a really good job with that. And then Chase finally said, "Okay, well, I'll go just to make all of you happy, but you'll see. I'm going to get there. They're going to drug test me, and I'm going to come back home."
Okay.
So in the middle of all that, he gets up to at one point, he's packing his bag, and I'm keeping an eye on him, but he goes to the bathroom and he closed the door. I hear the water turn on, and I go to turn the knob, and he had gone out the window.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But he came back. Mm-hmm. He came back after an hour or two, and he was ready to go. So he did go.
Where was it located? Where did he go?
He went to a treatment center. It was a 30-day program. And I always encourage parents to look for longer programs than that. I know they're expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, at least 90 days. But he went to a 30-day program in South Florida. Oh, man, I'm trying to remember the name. It was close to Deerfield Beach because I know he ended up in Deerfield Beach for sober living.
Okay.
Um, but yeah.
And then that was successful. And he got clean. He started to turn things around. And then he came, and he was back home at that time.
Yeah, he came back home. He spent a total of about 9 months in Florida, bounced around to a lot of different halfway houses, and came back home. And to tell you the truth, I mean, he was sober in terms he wasn't using, and he was going to IOP.
Okay.
I told him, I said, look, he wanted his car. And I said, well, here are the rules. The car was in my name, but my parents had left a handwritten note that he was to get the car.
Yeah.
But I had the title, and I said, look, you can have the car, but you got to do these things.
Yeah.
Go to IOP, go get a job, show me you can hold down your job. And I think I have one or two other stipulations. And he did all of those things, and I let him have his car. But when he first came home, yeah, he still had a little bit of an attitude, still a little bit rebellious, mostly like with the way he dressed and crazy hairdo and all of that.
Yeah.
But he changed all of that over the next several months. And he seemed like he really wanted to continue his recovery and get better, and was doing pretty well with the program.
That's great. That's great. You said, I read where you said, I worried about Chase constantly, but it seemed as though my efforts to help him only made matters worse.
Yeah.
What do you mean as a parent?
Oh, yeah. That's great. I don't remember writing that. That's probably in my book that I wrote about Chase. But he that's really good. That's a really good statement. He I think as parents, we have to learn how to let go and stop trying to control our kids, even once they're addicted. I think what happens is the fear kicks in for parents.
Yeah.
And that fear will drive us to really do things that are irrational, and we try to control them. And you have to learn that you don't have any control over another human being. You can be a positive influence.
Right.
I use the analogy of pulling a rope versus pushing a rope, and but in this case, the rope doesn't have to cooperate. It's like it has a mind of its own.
Sure.
So, but the more we push, the more we attempt to control, the more they're going to push back. Yeah. They want to be treated like an adult, even though they're not behaving like an adult most of the time. They're offended when they're not treated like one. So it tends to create more friction, and it just causes more problems.
Well, they've developed this false reality too.
That's true. Yeah.
They develop this false reality, and then they're around other bad influences who have poor family environments, and they're talking bad about their families. And then next thing you know, even though you, Kim, did everything you possibly could to raise them correctly, it's still not right in their eyes. And that's always hard for us as parents to accept.
It is. And, young people go through phases when there's going to be a time when especially when they're teenagers, but I think sometimes even into their early to mid 20s, they think mom and dad don't know anything.
Yeah.
And as they get a little bit older and they reflect back, they go, wow, mom and dad were pretty smart. They knew more than I realized,
Well, you remember that saying by Mark Twain? He said, when I was 14, my father was the dumbest man I ever knew. But when I turned 21, I couldn't believe how smart he'd become.
Right. Yeah. I love Mark Twain. A lot of good quotes from him for sure.
Let's talk about the tough part. And, you received, I'm sure you received a phone call that he was out involved in that car accident. Take us there if you can, and just because he's going through rehab, things start turning around, but there was a trigger, he relapses, and then this happens.
Yeah, he had actually come to me and said, Dad, I'm headed in a bad direction again, hanging out with a rough crowd again. I need to break ties with these people. I don't know how to do it without moving. So I've taken a job transfer back to the area where I was in treatment in Florida. He told me when he was planning to leave. I told Kim, excuse me, and Kim made Chase promise that that he would come by and have a meal with us before leaving for Florida. Well, the day he was supposed to come by and eat with us, he doesn't show up. It's getting later in the afternoon, and we're thinking, well, this is really nothing new, We're kind of hanging out with Justin in the living room, all just talking a little bit. And I had a phone call from one of my friends, and we're just chit-chatting. I didn't want to disturb Kim and Justin with my phone conversation, so I took it outside. It was May 29th, 2014, coming up on the 10-year anniversary now. So I'm outside in the front lawn, beautiful day out, and I'm talking to my friend when I see a City of Raleigh police cruiser pull up to the curb in front of our house. And I told my friend I need to go. It looks like Chase is in some kind of trouble. The officer had started up my driveway, and so I met him there, and that's where he told me, Mr. Rodgers has been a bad wreck out on I-40, and your son Chase died at the scene.
Mm.
And right where we were standing, pretty close to that spot, I can't tell you how many times I had thrown Chase passes, throwing in the football, and just throw it just out of reach just to watch him use his athleticism, make diving catches. He loved every second of it. Mm-hmm. Just all those kind of memories, things are kind of coming back to you. And there was a little bit of confusion when the officer first arrived because there were several people in the car, and he had us confused with one of the other families a little bit. The address. And so that threw a little bit of confusion in there. And then finally, when we got that straightened out, he told me Chase was dead. And I'm thinking, I misunderstood him, so there's kind of a long pause. And then I look at him and I said, he's dead? And he sort of dropped his head and he said, yes, sir. And he asked me if there was anyone inside that I would like for him to notify. I said, well, my wife and my other son are in there, but that's my job. Let me do that. And he asked if he could go in with me for support. And I agreed to that. And so we go in through the front door, look immediately to my right. There's Kim in the recliner. Justin's back on the sofa in the corner. And split second after I make eye contact with Kim, I can see her expression change to one of just terror because she sees this officer come in the door behind me. She knows whatever I'm about to say is not going to be good.
Wow.
And I just had to come out and tell her, there's been a bad wreck and Chase is dead. And it took a while for us. We all cried, took a while to get settled down, and then began to ask the officer questions about what had happened that day.
And once after 24, 48 hours or a number of days go by, you find out that it was the driver was, or they were all smoking marijuana, or it was marijuana induced or reckless.
Yeah. They were all smoking marijuana. The story is, and I've never been able to really confirm the story, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. This first part, and it was that there was a big going away party the night before. They all used drugs and alcohol.
Yeah,
what's that?
For Chase, a going away party.
Chase. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't clarify that. Yeah, for Chase, because he was leaving that next day to go to treatment, and he. They all woke up late the next morning, the morning of the wreck. They were feeling hungover and decided, hey, let's go to the park and smoke some marijuana to help cope with our nausea. Now, I know that they did go to the park. This part was in the police report. They did go to the park. They did smoke marijuana together there in the park. And there was at least 3 of them that did. I don't know who else may have been there, but Chase allowed this girl that had smoked with him. It was a girl he had dated at one time, really pretty girl. Mm-hmm. She was 18. He allowed her to get behind the wheel of the car. He got in the front passenger seat. Another kid got in the back, and they left that park. They did make one quick stop for a bite to eat and then headed out on the I-40 right in rush hour traffic. They really only went 3 or 4 miles from that park before she lost control of Chase's car in a curb. Running about 70, car spun out of control, left the road, and struck a tree. Chase died at the scene.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Oh, my goodness. And am I correct in reading that the young lady that was the driver committed suicide 8 months later, or a number of months later?
Yeah, she did. There was a fire that broke out in her apartment, and fire chief said, based on their investigation, they believed that she poured gasoline all over the floor of her apartment, stood in the middle of it, and ignited it. And she died from her burns the next day in the hospital. 2 suicide notes that she left behind, one online and one that somehow survived the fire.
Really? I mean, Darryl, it's just amazing, isn't it? When these, even adults, but these young people, start filling their lives with all the wrong things. And, wouldn't you agree in your experience now and all that you've invested in the last 10 years that it's a very selfish,
oh, yeah. Yeah.
So much selfishness, and it's all about me, and and what have you, and yeah. But at the same, and then as a result, one event we lose Chase, and then subsequently, so many other people, families, especially extended families, are suffer as a result of these poor choices.
Yeah. Well, the adolescent brain, the brain is still developing until age 25, plus or minus a few years. Right. So it's natural for teenagers to be, somewhat selfish, and they grow out of that usually in time. And but the introduction of drugs and alcohol stunts the growth of the development of the brain. Yeah. And particularly it affects the connection of the frontal lobe to the rest of the brain. And so they lose a lot of those adult type decision-making abilities. Yeah. And they do become they're very childlike. We see a lot of times adults who've been in addiction for years who behave like they're 15 or 16-year-old. That's because they started using when they were around 15 or 16. They sort of got stuck there, Yeah.
One of my dear friends, and actually was a guest on one of my other podcasts, Dr. John Umhow, he specializes on addiction in the brain, and we had a great discussion about that. I mean, and my other physician friend, Don Middleton, same, talks about all the effects of alcohol and other drugs on the brain. It's just horrific. We could go a lot further than that, but in the time we have remaining, I want to ask you about this. One, your faith, you and Kim, your faith. How did losing Chase? What did it do to your faith at those days, weeks, months, years now since his passing? What happened?
Solidified it.
Yeah.
Solidified it. Yeah.
Because you had
what's that?
You had a choice. We all have a choice.
Yeah. It. I think the thing that the area where I'm very, very blessed is that I had parents who were very strong in their faith, very strong Christians, and they not only, they didn't just talk the talk, they walk the walk every day, and I got to see that. I got to see that growing up every single day.
Yeah,
and not perfect. not by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely, flawed people, but
Sure.
I think most people that knew them would say they were really, really great people.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I mean, just witnessing that, I
Yeah.
had this foundation to begin with. So when all of this happened, a lot of people, who'd been through other trials and things
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
did you not did you not question God? Did you
Right.
not get angry at God? I said, no,
Right.
I was never angry at God. That doesn't make sense to me to be angry at God. He didn't cause
He
this,
doesn't. He doesn't cause the pain. People so
No,
mistakenly think that he causes all the turmoil, all the pain, all the addiction, He doesn't do that. There's another adversary out there that grabs the hold of our kids' hearts and souls, and it's a battle. And these
it
young,
is a
like you
battle.
said, not only is the brain undeveloped, but these young people, they don't comprehend the battle that is going on for their soul, and they keep giving into their desires and fitting in and wanting to use, and the battle continues because they allow it.
Yeah. You talked about I was going with the brain a little bit there, but the brain is really controlled by the mind and the
Yeah,
spirit, so
absolutely.
it is definitely having witnessed people who are in the throes of addiction and having witnessed it in my own son.
Yeah.
It is definitely spiritual warfare.
Oh,
And if you've never seen someone who is in psychosis
mhm.
or who is really, really high, when you see that, it looks like something that you could describe as demon possession,
It is.
right?
No, demonic. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it absolutely
Well,
is.
yeah, I mean, the opposite of God, the opposite of
Mm,
spirit filled. I mean, the opposite of a, healthy, faith filled, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually is the opposite. You're either with
absolutely.
God or not with God. And when
Yeah,
you're not with God,
absolutely.
which I ran with many, 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 many years ago, so it's, until that life change in my own life. I mean, we make a choice and our kids make poor choices, no doubt about it. They do. Um, with the time we have remaining, Darryl, now your grief, you, Kim, Justin, but your grief has been a catalyst for you to be immersed in helping others. So share about what you've been doing the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a journey for sure,
Yeah.
in more ways than one. And
Let me interrupt you because you wrote the book. You wrote
yeah,
the book, A Life Half Lived,
yeah,
in honor of Chase. That's available. And I'll give all the information as we go, at the close, but also when we launch the podcast. But people can download that for free, correct? And then you
yeah.
also created the online course for parents, and we'll talk more of that at the
Okay.
end. But you then had this inspiration of the Lord to, okay, this is what I have to do.
Yeah, I started out with the book. It took me about a year to really write it because I'm grieving the whole time I'm writing the book, to write it and get it published and everything. And shortly after the book came out, I began doing some speaking. I got some invitations to do some speaking, and one in a church, one for North Carolina Mothers Against Drunk Driving at a press conference, and that just sort of propelled me into doing a lot of speaking. And so I've traveled a good bit. I've been as far north as Vermont, and as far south as like Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and everything in between speaking, over the years. And and in the whole process of all of that, I was learning more about addiction because when I wrote the book, I look back on the book now and I was very judgmental towards people who suffered from addiction. I didn't understand addiction. So my attitude has changed a lot. God's changed my attitude about that a lot. And anyway, in the whole process of that, I began to somebody pointed me towards PAL, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Which is a Christian-based organization. It is a support group, a peer support group for parents who have a son or daughter battling addiction.
Did you go to the convention? When was it?
I did not. I need to do that next time around.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Dr. Middleton, spoke at that. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
And we have a here in Northern Virginia. There's a I guess an office, or they're located here locally too.
Neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
PAL has really been instrumental for me. I learned a lot about addiction through PAL, and there was a local group here that had just started up in a church close by, and I went to a meeting to see what it was all about. And I would have been to maybe 2 or 3 meetings, and the lady that started it asked me if I would mind becoming a co-facilitator. And I did. And then eventually she went back to work full time and couldn't continue the duties. She asked me if I would take over the group. And so I've been facilitating, I've been facilitating that group ever since.
Awesome.
It's been over 6 years now.
Oh, that's great. And you also, now you said you just got certified as an interventionist in September. Now, are you just, is your service area there in North Carolina, or are you on your own?
I'm on my own, but I do collaborate with some other interventionists who train me and are continuing to train me as we go. And they have a platform called Intervention on Call.
Okay.
And people can book a 1-hour session on there and pay for a 1-hour session. And sometimes they can get everything they need to either set the boundaries they need to set or conduct their own intervention with 1 or 2 sessions on Intervention on Call.
Awesome.
Sometimes they will say, at the end of that, they'll say, look, I still need a trained professional to show up to do this intervention for us. That's awesome. Kind of how that goes.
That's awesome. Couple minutes left. And one, in closing, I want you to just speak directly to the parents. But what's the one thing you did right in this whole situation?
I would say the first thing I would say is having the intervention. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. I made a lot of mistakes. I think one mistake I made, in my opinion, was allowing Chase to move back in when he left sober living.
Okay.
And I think that may have contributed to a relapse, but definitely, and there's a whole other string of mistakes, but the intervention, I would do it again in a heartbeat, because it helped us set the boundaries that we needed to set. And it helped him get into treatment. It gave him a chance at recovery. Okay.
Excellent. Now, talk to the parents that have a child or adult child that is struggling, and they talk to them. They feel absolutely hopeless. What would you say?
Yeah, hopeless and helpless. Those are the 2 words that I hear the most from parents going through this. Yeah. And I would say, first of all, you do need a firm foundation. You do need that faith. You need that connection with Jesus Christ, because otherwise, I don't know how you get through this. Yeah. You're going to have a lot of fears around what could happen to your child. And I would say to lean into your faith on that and pray a lot, because and reach out and get some help.
Yes.
From someone else. Join a support group like PAL, and because you're going to need the strength to overcome that fear. That fear is going to drive you to try to control, to make attempts to control, and that's just going to make the situation worse. So you're going to have to learn how to trust God to get to that point where you can let go of those attempts to control the outcome.
Amen. Hard to do, isn't it? Because
it is very difficult.
We want to rescue. our initial effort, thought is, oh my gosh, I have to rescue. And just in the last 20 years of seeing parents, so many different families, such a hard boundary, so hard to do. But
it really is.
Yeah, you've been so helpful and will continue to be to so many people in the years to come until you and I are all used up.
Yeah. I'm in it to win it. I'm here for the long haul. So.
Amen. So am I. Well, Darryl, thank you so much for taking the time, and sharing your story, letting us in a glimpse of your family. Our best to Kim and Justin, and you and your mission and purpose and all you're doing to help people. I will have all of your information on Darryl's information on the podcast. So all your website, DarrylRodgers.com. You can download the book. You can get the online course there as well. And he has all other resources as well. InterventionOnCall.com. I'll include that as well for anybody interested in intervention or those that want to reach out to you directly. So I appreciate that. Brother, thank you so much for being on Stop Hiding, Start Healing.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today on Stop Hiding, Start Healing. We look forward to seeing you the next time. If we have shared anything today that has been maybe a trigger for you, or you have a loved one that is really struggling, and as Darryl said, you feel hopeless and helpless, don't hide. Don't hide. Speak up, speak out, because as parents, we often feel like we're on an island totally alone, but you're not. That's your own doing. We tend to isolate. Step up, say something, reach out to myself, reach out to Darryl. We're here to help you no matter the situation with your child, whatever they're going through. So we'll see you next time. Stop hiding, start healing. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Stop Hiding, Start Healing. We hope our time together has ignited a spark of self-discovery and inspired you to take bold steps towards healing and growth through Christ-centered recovery. Remember, the journey is ongoing, and every choice you make to confront your challenges and embrace your true self brings you closer to a life of meaning and purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, don't hesitate to share it with others who might find encouragement and strength in our discussions. Be sure to get a copy of Craig's book, Stop Hiding, Start Healing, available on Amazon and where books are sold. And visit our website, stophiding.starthealing.org, for more information and to invite Craig to speak at your next event, seminar, retreat, or conference. Be sure to join us next time. And remember, it's time for you to stop hiding and start healing.